Okay, so like I was saying, software, it's like everywhere, right? You order food online, there's an app for that. You're trying to beat traffic, hello, navigation software, which gets me thinking, how do they even make all this stuff?
Mm.
Well, lucky for us, we found this episode of TechTalk Nexus, and it's all about, you guessed it, modern software development.
One thing that really stuck out, they kept mentioning these things called Agile and DevOps. Have you heard of those before?
Oh, absolutely. And they're not just these like techie buzzwords. They're actually changing the game for how software is made these days.
Okay, so break it down for me. The podcast I listened to mentioned this whole Agile versus waterfall thing. What's that all about?
Well, it all comes down to speed and how quickly things change in the tech world and how you adapt to those changes. Like, imagine waiting years for a software update. These days, that's like bringing a stone tablet to a smartphone fight. Yeah, you definitely don't want to be that guy.
You got it. Agile dishes that old-school waterfall approach where everything is set in stone. Instead, it's all about being flexible and working together to build software. It's like, instead of planning every little detail up front and never straying from the plan no matter what, Agile teams are all about rolling with the punches. They work in these like short bursts, constantly getting feedback and releasing updates way more often.
So like how my favorite music app seems to get a new feature every other week, is that Agile?
Exactly. It's all about constantly making things better based on what users are saying in real time.
That actually makes a lot of sense. But how does all this new stuff actually get to me, like on my phone or computer?
That's where DevOps swoops in to save the day. It's all about bridging the gap between those brilliant minds writing the code and the teams making sure that code actually gets to us users smoothly and reliably.
So Agile is like building this awesome race car, and DevOps is making sure it gets out of the pit stop and onto the track without a hitch.
You got it. It's like this well-oiled machine streamlining everything from writing the code to testing it, to getting those updates out so you have a seamless experience. And you know how they do that? Automation.
Ooh, automation. Now, that makes me think of robots and AI taking over the world. Are we there yet?
Not quite. But automation is definitely becoming a bigger deal in software development. Instead of someone manually checking thousands of lines of code for errors, they have systems that do it automatically, which lets the developers focus on the really complicated stuff.
That sounds pretty efficient. Hold on. We're getting a bit ahead of ourselves here. Before we dive into the world of AI and robots, let's circle back to DevOps for a second. So we've talked about Agile being all about speed and flexibility, and DevOps being the bridge between developers and users like me. But what's happening under the hood to make this all work? It feels like there must be some serious tools involved.
You're absolutely right. The TechTalk Nexus episode dives into some of those, and one that stood out to me was Git. It's a version control system which might sound a bit dry.
Okay, yeah, not exactly the most exciting term. What's so special about this Git thing?
Imagine you and I are editing the same document. It would be a nightmare trying to keep track of who changed what right. Git solves that problem for software developers. It's like a supercharged track changes for code, allowing multiple developers to work on the same project simultaneously without stepping on each other's toes.
So it's all about collaboration without the chaos. I can get behind that. What else is in this developer toolkit? The TechTalk Nexus folks also mentioned something called containerization, specifically a tool called Docker. What's that all about?
Think of it like this. You have an app on your phone, but you also want it to work seamlessly on your computer and maybe even your smart TV. In the past, developers sometimes had to create separate versions of the app for each platform, which was a huge headache.
Yeah, that sounds like a recipe for frustration for both developers and users.
Exactly. Containerization solves this by packaging up the software and all its dependencies into a neat little container that can run smoothly on any device, regardless of its operating system. It's like having a universal adapter for software.
Okay, that's pretty slick. So Docker's like the shipping container of the software world, making sure everything arrives intact and ready to go.
Exactly. It's all about making software more portable and consistent, which benefits everyone involved.
This is all starting to feel very efficient. What other tricks do they have up their sleeves to make sure software is top-notch?
Well, they touched on CI/CD, which stands for Continuous Integration and Continuous Delivery. Now, this one is less about specific tools and more about a set of practices that ensure code changes are constantly integrated, tested, and delivered to users as smoothly as possible.
So it's like having a super efficient assembly line for software, constantly churning out updates and improvements.
Exactly. It's all about automating those crucial steps in the software development lifecycle to make everything faster, more reliable, and less prone to errors.
Okay, so we've covered Agile, DevOps, and a bunch of cool tools that help make it all happen. But there's one more thing I'm dying to ask about AI. The TechTalk Nexus episode mentioned it, and I have to admit I'm both fascinated and a little intimidated by the idea of AI writing software. So AI and software development, are we talking like robot overlords taking our coding jobs? Anytime soon, I mean.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? A lot of people are wondering about that. The truth is, AI is already changing how we build software, but it's not like they're going to replace us completely. Not yet, at least. It's more about AI giving us a helping hand boosting what we can do.
Okay, so less robots are going to steal our jobs, and more robots are our new coding buddies.
Exactly. Think of it like this. AI can look at tons of code net, find patterns, and even suggest solutions to really complex problems. So that frees us up to focus on the more creative stuff like design and making sure the software is easy and fun to use.
That makes a lot of sense. The podcast I mentioned talked about tools like GitHub Copilot. Is that the kind of thing you're talking about?
Absolutely. GitHub Copilot is a perfect example of AI lending developers a hand. It's like having a super smart coding buddy who can finish your code for you, suggest improvements, and even catch those pesky bugs before they become big problems.
Wow, that actually does sound super helpful, especially for someone like me who can barely write an email without spell check. But are there any downsides to all this AI stuff?
Well, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. One big thing we need to be careful about is making sure these AI tools are developed and used responsibly. You know? Like, we have to think about things like bias in algorithms and how it might affect developers in the long run. And of course, we got to make sure AI is used for good in the software development world.
So just because we can use AI to build software doesn't mean we always should.
Right. You hit the nail on the head. It's all about finding that balance between using the power of AI while also remembering to be careful and ethical.
Okay, so we've covered a lot today. From Agile to DevOps to AI, it seems like the software development world never slows down.
You can say that again. It's constantly changing because people want faster, more efficient, and easier to use software.
So for those of us who are just users, what's the key takeaway from all of this?
You know, I think the biggest thing to remember is that even understanding a little bit about how software is made can make you appreciate the technology you use every single day. Plus, since AI is becoming such a big deal in software, it's important for everyone to be aware of both the good and the bad that might come with it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So next time I'm scrolling through my favorite app, I'll take a second to think about all the hard work and tech magic that went into making it. And who knows, maybe I'll even try out one of those AI coding tools. It seems like even a tech newbie like me could pick up a thing or two. This deep dive has been really eye-opening. Thanks for exploring the wild world of modern software development with me. Until next time.